Hi guys, EJ here, and welcome to part 5 of my answer videos. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the first question comes from Absolute Sublime 1, Jay, and Jay asks, favorite horror movie, and that is The Shining. Favorite movie you have seen thus far this year? Wow, January and February have sucked so far this year. But last week I saw Cedar Rapids. I really enjoyed that. Very funny movie with Ed Helms, John C. Riley, and Anne Heche, who I didn't even know was in it. She's really funny and very sexy. Really enjoyed it. John C. Riley was hilarious. Has one of my favorite lines that I've heard in a couple years. Just a really funny movie. I enjoyed that one. Favorite sequel. Some of you might hate me for this, but Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. I just love that film. Terminator 2, Judgment Day, The Godfather Part 2. Yeah, so I'll say those. Movie you think needs a sequel? Well, most movies that need a sequel get a sequel, and some that don't need a sequel get a sequel. I'd say Salt. I really enjoyed that, and they kind of set it up so there will be sequels. Kind of like the female Jason Bourne, so I'd like to see that. And Star Trek definitely needs to see some sequels from the reboot. I'm pretty sure they're making sequels for that, so definitely that one. And finally, he asks, tuna or peanut butter? I'll have to go tuna on this one. I do like peanut butter, only like on toast, but I like never eat it. Um, and I hate peanut butter and chocolate together. I love them like separately, and that's like the big candy thing over here, and I just can't stand it. It's awful. But I like tuna better than peanut butter. So thank you, Jay, for those questions. Up next, we have Big Al 1982. And Alan asks, what 5 films would you pick on a flight? Um, Final Destination? Snakes on a Plane? No, I wouldn't go with those. That's kind of dangerous. I'd probably go with something like The Hangover. You don't want anything too violent or depressing. So like standard laugh out loud comedies, I guess. Wedding Crashers, The 40-Year-Old Virgin. I'll say Due Date. I don't know, like a fantasy movie like Alice in Wonderland, the new one, something like that. 5 songs for a road trip, mixtape, OK CD, LOL. That's funny because all my music is on mixed CDs that I made on recordable discs. I have them labeled by year, and I just have a bunch of different songs from that year from different kinds of artists, and I listen to those in my car. But okay, here's how you make a good mixtape. First, you want to start it off with a bang, so I'd go with Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses. One of the most awesome debut songs ever. Then you want to keep it going, so I go with Even Flow, Pearl Jam. Then you want to take it down a notch a little bit. I play something like Crazy on You by Heart. Then you want to kick it back up a notch. Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine. That's one of the most awesome driving songs. I love driving to that song. And I like to end my CDs with a ballad, something slow. So I go with Bryan Adams, Everything I Do It For You, from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Me and Jamie were talking about that, because she loves that film as well, and I just love that song from that movie. So yeah, that's 5. Last film you watched and hated? Well, I mentioned Salo, or 120 Days of Sodom, which I watched a few nights ago. But the night after it, I watched Caligula, and that was even worse. It was just bad. I mean, kind of gloriously bad too. I didn't like Salo more because of the themes and subject matter, but Caligula was just bad. Bad filmmaking all around. Movie that always make you pumped up. I'd have to say Commando. Arnold Schwarzenegger, 1985 classic. I just love that film. The montage where he's getting all the gear and weapons together. I just love that. And then the assault on the island is one of my favorite action scenes of all time. He just takes down so many guys in so many different ways in that scene. It just blows my mind every time. I love it. And if you could live in the time period, not this one, what would it be and why? Um, I've always wanted to be like a knight in like the Middle Ages, like fighting in the Crusades, something like that. Only drawback would be the conditions and disease and getting your limbs cut off in battle, stuff like that. And I always thought it would be cool to grow up in the 60s and 70s, all that cool music. Plus, my generation didn't really have anything to, quote, believe in or fight for, like civil rights and Vietnam, peace and love, all that kind of stuff. So I always thought it would be cool to be part of something like that. But I was born a little too late for that. Um, so thank you, Alan, for those questions. Up next we have Nate Fisher, 1985. Why do you have an American accent if you're from Sussex, England? Right, well, because I was born in London and I grew up in Kent and East Sussex for the first 14 years of my life. And then on August 1st, 1992, me and my family moved to California, and I've been here ever since. So I've lived here most of my life now, and the accent kind of got lost along the way. But when I say certain words, the English still comes out sometimes. It's kind of why I have a different voice and speech than most people. If you think it's kind of weird, that's kind of why. So thank you for that question. Next we have Dirty Harry Fan 88, double dipping on the questions, man. Top 10 best remakes. Wow. Okay, King Kong, Peter Jackson's King Kong. The Departed, if you count that. Dawn of the Dead, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Invasion of the Body Snatchers from 1978, the Thomas Crown Affair, love that remake. The Italian Job, that's a good remake. Ocean's 11, of course the George Clooney, Brad Pitt one, but I do like the 1960 original, and well, that's like 8 or 9. What else? The Ring, great film, even though I haven't seen the original. Yeah, that's like 9 or 10. And of course, top 10 worst remakes. Man, that's a lot tougher. Psycho, the 1998 one. I didn't like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. Other bad remakes. I'm sure there's a lot, but when it comes to bad movies, they kind of just disappear from my mind. So yeah, I wish I could think of more, but those are the ones that come to mind. So thank you for that question. Next we have Shagrat65. Top 5 most brutal movie deaths. Oh, Kyle, that's a good question, man. You know what death I always thought was pretty brutal? Just the way it happens is the scene in RoboCop when the machine, they're doing the demonstration of the machine in the office building, and the guy just gets blown away for like no reason. You have 20 seconds to comply. That scene always freaked me out when I was a kid. There's some good ones in James Bond movies, of course. I always thought Jonathan Pryce Price's death scene in Tomorrow Never Dies is pretty brutal. He gets annihilated by the drill, the torpedo drill. Bond like pushes him against the console, and he just gets like crushed really badly in that. Oh, the kid in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom who gets his heart ripped out and then lowered in the pit of fire. That's a pretty brutal death scene. And he's like screaming as he's like clinging to the metal cage. That always stands out. Uh, the end of Under Siege 2, I always thought, is it Peter Bogdanovich who played the bad guy? His death scene was always pretty brutal. He's like clinging onto the helicopter as the train is like crashing below him and blowing up, and he gets his fingers cut off by the door, and then he falls into the fire. That scene always I thought was pretty brutal. And I'll also say, even though he doesn't die technically, the scene where Felix Leiter gets lowered into the shark tank in at the beginning of License to Kill. He gets his legs like chewed up, and he's left for dead. That scene always I thought was pretty brutal. So thanks, Kyle, for those questions. Up next we have Forkerball. How many DVDs, Blu-ray do you own, and why oh why support Chelsea? Well, I told you how many DVDs, so it's like about 1,800, and 40 of those are Blu-rays. About 40. That's how many Blu-rays I have now. Why do I support Chelsea? Well, growing up, I was always under the impression that I was born in Chelsea, the part of London, of course, where Chelsea is. But I didn't learn until later on that I was born probably near Fulham. But I've supported Chelsea since I was a young boy, and no going back now. So, hey man, the 80s and 90s were rough for Chelsea fans. We were a mediocre mid-table team most of my young years. It wasn't until the last decade until of course Abramovich took over and we became Chelsea and no longer Chelsea. So that's why I support the Blues and deal with it. So thank you for watching. I'll end it right there, and I'll see you next time for part 6.